Hello. So funny. I'm always like waiting for the is this thing on? Are we here?
Wow.
Yeah, we're here. All right. Hi, everybody. This is Deb and Heather, and we have a special guest. We're going to introduce Mari with the Skeptic and the Mystic podcast. We're on episode 32. So, in this show, we love to talk about some of these mystical practices with a little bit of the practical edge. So, we'll address the skeptics out there. I think this is going to be a super exciting one because, Mari, I'm going to let you give everybody you can give a brief introduction, but we are going to talk about what it means to be psychic and how you are bringing that in to help people up their game, find their passions. And I really am curious about what that means for you and would love to learn, how you discovered that you have these gifts and how you got comfortable with it. This is some of the stuff we were talking about before we kicked off. For three people who all really prescribe this and subscribe to it, I know for me personally, there's still a level of shyness around it or, not owning it quite fully in all of my circles. So I'd love to learn more. And yeah, we'll dive in. We'll let you introduce.
Love it. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. So I'm Mari Roberts, and I am a psychic life coach, and I am here to empower my clients to connect with their passion and their purpose. And they do that by actually just connecting to their inner knowing and connecting to their truth and trusting that intuition, that inner knowing. So thanks so much for allowing me to be here. I can't wait to dive into the conversations because we did start earlier and there's some good stuff. And I think you've got lots of good stuff you brought up to touch on.
Yeah, we'll never learn our lesson without starting. We start our conversation before we're recording and then we're like, oh, we should have saved that every time. Yeah. So you and I have worked together a little bit.
Yeah.
We have a common friend, I guess, who introduced us. But yeah, I would really love for you to share your story of really recognizing that you have these abilities, and then how did you discover that for yourself, and then how did you go about putting it out there? Because now you're like for reals doing it.
For reals.
For real.
Oh my goodness. So it's really funny because it was nothing exciting. You hear of people uncovering their gifts and you hear that it was, a major car accident or something happened. It was not, or a major breakup, something dramatic. It was not that at all. And what is funny and interesting is I've been psychic my whole life. I just didn't know it. And I think I've shared this with you before, Deb, when I was a little girl, I used to walk between what I used to call the Star Trek people between my doors. And I just knew that they were protecting my door and my parents' doors at night. I never said anything to anyone. I just thought it was a normal thing. And then as I got older, I started having really vivid dreams. And again, sort of same thing. I'd have these really vivid dreams. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and just keep the light on until I passed out again. And I never said anything to my parents, ever. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's interesting. What part of you thought, I got to keep this to myself, I wonder?
I just figured it was just a bad dream, and what else was going to happen was probably my mom would come in and talk to me and tuck me in, but I didn't even want to go back to sleep. So just to keep myself awake until I passed out was, to me, the most logical thing. And at that time, my room was next to my parents' room, like across the hall from my parents' room. So, I don't know. It's wild. And then
what ages do you think that was?
Pardon?
About what ages?
So we lived in San Francisco from birth until I was 8 years old, and a particular house that we lived on in San Francisco is when I remember walking, like having the recollection. I want to say I was 6, 7 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old when that was happening. And then when we moved to Redding, I remember the dreams starting when we moved in. We had our house built. So I remember those dreams started when we moved into that house. So that was probably 9 years old until through high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the sort of reawakening or awareness of my gifts happened. My dad passed away, and when my dad passed away, which was 2015, I'm trying to get my years right, 2015, one of my younger brother's really good friends was there, and she said something about my skin looking nice, and I just had this hit that I needed to go down the rabbit hole and figure out more about her. And I literally went down the Facebook rabbit hole and found out that she was intuitive and did readings. And so I reached out to her and we had a reading and we did some work together for a little while. And I remember her saying, Mari, you're empathic. You're very empathic. And I was just like, everybody's empathic, nothing new. And she just said, you're very empathic. Fast forward, I moved to the Pacific Northwest. I live in the Seattle area. And she had said, hey, when you move there, things are going to happen really quickly. And just know things will happen really quickly. I thought it was about my career. It wasn't about my career. It was about my gifts coming on. Yeah. And sort of same thing happened. I started getting interested in shadow work. I, was like on Goop had articles. Everyone had articles about it. And I was like, what is this shadow work? It's very interesting. I'm very curious. My mom came to visit. We went to Whidbey Island for a weekend, met a really amazing florist. She had this beautiful floral shop. Flying Bear Farms. I'd like to mention it in case anyone ever is in the area. Definitely go and visit her. You can have things mail ordered. She's truly amazing. And so I'd love to promote that. But sort of same thing. I started following her on Instagram, and one day she posted about a friend getting married and not being able to be at the wedding. And it was just the same hit. I need to research who is this lady that she said, at so-and-so, I hope you have a wonderful wedding. Went down the rabbit hole. She's a shadow worker. So I started working with her. She then also said sort of the same thing, Mari, you're very intuitive, as everyone's intuitive. So you're really intuitive. And she had a meetup called Intuitive Jam. And she said, why don't you come to the meetup? And I said, okay, I'll go. I didn't even tell my husband what I was going to. I just said, I'm going to this meetup called the Jam. At that time, I was nervous. So I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to think I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
And that's really how it began and how it came to be. Is that the dog?
Dog humping the pillow right now. Yeah.
Real life.
Sorry.
Real life.
Rarely ever does that anymore, but clearly he's, I don't know.
It's real life.
He's in the shadows. He's trying to be discreet.
It's real life. So same thing, I went to the Intuitive Jam. It took me a while before I actually finally said something. And finally one day I said something, and months, I didn't go back for months. And when I went back, the woman who I said something to said, the very next day, because I basically had seen trees, and like a canopy of trees. And the very next day, she said to me that her friend called her out of the blue, asked her to go camping, and Mount Rainier. They went camping, and she said she looked up, and there she was under the canopy of trees. And so that's when I thought, okay, let me just continue to practice with this, and more just started to happen from there. But that's how it came to be. Nothing really exciting or wild. And I like to share that also because I think people believe that something drastic has to happen for them to tap into their own inner knowing and their own gifts. And that's just not the case.
Just makes for better movies.
It does. And really good books.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe you won't get a Lifetime movie written about you, but whatever.
Whatevs.
Yeah.
So what, like, when I hear psychic coach, my first thought is, okay, what the heck is that? Like, I think at this point everybody knows what a coach is, right? But like life coach or whatever, but like a psychic coach, like I, being the one who always like, what is this stuff? I can conjure up lots of different crazy thoughts in my head of what a psychic coach is. So can you like give clarity to what specifically that means for you in your practice?
Yes. First and foremost, I'm very practical. I'm not, I wouldn't call myself, I think also when you hear psychic, you think, not grounded, not practical, completely. Right. Yeah. No, not me. So for me, it means that I'm connecting with my gifts. I'm using them. So for me, and I also like to speak in not terms of like clairvoyant or clairaudient, because I feel like that can also feel very alienating, and also can feel like it's something you can't attain. And so I know, I see, I feel, I hear. I keep it real simple. And I use those gifts when we're working together. And so it just depends on the way I'm coaching with a person. Sometimes it is that something will come up and I will give insight. And sometimes it is actually doing a full, I'd say, traditional reading where I'm answering questions, and the knowing and information comes through. So I blend those things together, really. And I do coaching, very like practical coaching. I went to IPEC. So, it's still traditional coaching behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to call it that practical, mystical behavior, basically. Methodology, maybe a better word.
Right.
Yeah.
So because for anybody who's watching and don't know, coaching, I don't know if I get this question all the time. People are like, oh, I really want to be a coach. And I'll say, well, how come you want to be a coach? And they're like, well, people come to me advice for all the time, and I love telling people what to do. And I'm like, you don't want to be a coach then. You want to be a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a consultant tells people what to do. A coach asks questions and asks more questions. And a coach that rarely says, go do this. If you're taking something through a program, which is what a lot of people do these days, like they'll have this program and they'll call themselves a coach, and they're like, okay, do this, this, but they don't have the fine art of asking questions and like helping somebody to explore, like you do, like, with IPEC training, or like, so how do you, because with psychic stuff, a lot of times it is like, hey, I'm seeing something, I'm feeling something, I'm hearing something, that then gets into the telling part. Right?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Yeah. So if we're doing I'll give an example of, I have these sessions I call psychic life consulting sessions, and I use coaching in it. And so if I'm doing a traditional reading, I do get information. I know what to tell you, what to do with it. And then once I give you all that information, first and foremost, you have free will. You can do whatever you want with the information I share. It's also present tense, and it's helping to allow you to be seen, to validate whatever it is that's happening, to acknowledge feelings, or help you connect sometimes feelings that are tied maybe even to childhood that you had no idea was actually affecting current state. And then we are going to coach on whatever it is that came up. So you want to now, I'm making this up, you now have learned something about yourself, and now you want to take the steps to implement it. So now we're going to have traditional coaching on, what does that look like for you? What does that mean? You're going to get the questions of maybe who would that affect? How might that affect them? And then, how are we going to implement this? So what is the thing I like to always ask is sort of like have like, this is a very IPEC-y thing, but, sort of like, what is ideal, what is the middle, and what is sort of the bare minimum that you can do? What does that look like? And then, okay, let's talk about what's the bare minimum. How can you put that into place? So letting them come up with their own solutions to how they want to address whatever it is that came up. So that's how, very kind of practical way of talking about it, but that's how that shows up.
So it's as I know in my coaching with people, oftentimes like everybody's looking for certainty at the end of the day, right? And so, like with the energy work that I do, a lot of times, like we'll pull up stuff and they'll be like, oh, well, there's trapped emotion here, or there's a no will to live energy, or there's a despair anchor of I'm not enough, or basic things. And like then they hear that and they're like, oh yeah, and then it ties them back to some story that they had, and then we're able to unwrap that, and then again give the practical stuff. So is it like similar to that, but you're just like, oh wait, this download's coming to me, like coming through me to give to you.
Yeah. And if it's a traditional coaching relationship, it's the same way of what do you want to talk about today? What's happening? How are we going to know you're successful? And then in that conversation, if I'm getting other forms of information, then I can share that with them. That's coming up, but it's still very traditional, for lack. I'm doing air quotes, but it's as you sort of mentioned, there's lots of different types of coaching out there these days. So yeah.
I'm just curious, I'm totally going to go on a tangent, but do you ever find that you try to work with somebody and they aren't open and you can't get a message for them?
I have had clients who aren't interested in the psychic piece, and I just don't bring it in.
But I mean, if they are, but does it ever not come through? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
They might subconsciously not open and therefore blocking your access.
I haven't had that.
Oh, cool.
I get fortunate.
I guess they wouldn't come to you if they weren't, they wouldn't come asking for that, perhaps, if they weren't ready.
Yeah. And I get a lot of people who have never had, if they've never worked with someone like me and they're curious, but they also are comfortable because they know I have a corporate background and they don't feel like I am being, ungrounded or over the top in any way, that they feel comfortable experiencing a different experience, basically.
Yeah. I think back to even when we first connected, because I had never worked with someone who, called themselves a psychic before. And I did, even being in this space and very much subscribing to this stuff, I kind of had this preconceived notion that I don't want fortune telling. And that's not what you do. But I thought that that's where psychics lie, is I don't really want, Heather and I have had many conversations about uncertainty and unknowns. I love them. I thrive in them. I don't want somebody to tell me what is happening for me because, number one, I want to choose. Number two, I just like to let it evolve. But I think that's a distinction where maybe a lot of people think of a psychic and they think of someone in a weird purple room with a crystal ball. Kind of like Heather was saying, if I ever become that person, let's have an intervention. You are so not that. Yeah. And I know you did, I think I asked you that question somewhere along the way. I'm not interested in future prescribing, but when people ask you for, future predicting, but when people ask you for that, how do you manage that? And,
I don't do it. Yeah, some people have, and I'm like, that's just not me. I don't do that. And I have also had the question, asking if I'm a medium. I'm like, I don't deal with people on the other side, and I haven't even attempted to see if I could tap into that. I'm not interested.
Right. Yeah. I think there's some ethics involved there too. We'll get into a gray area if we go down that path, but I do feel like the future predicting, and Heather, I've mentioned there's this, I don't like to knock people. There's the psychic bookstore that I really actually do enjoy going to because they have some cool products that I think are ethically sourced. So sometimes I go there, but they do have live readings that go on right there live in the store. And sometimes I hear stuff and I'm just like, oh my God, this feels wrong. It feels wrong, number one, that I'm walking through an open room and I can listen in on somebody's reading. I think that's a little bit weird. But I listen to what people are saying and I'm like, this is what gives people in our space a little bit of a bad rap.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of things to it, right? I think one, if you're in a public space, you're giving consent to be in that space, and you're choosing the questions that you're asking.
True.
And you are, if you're giving consent, you're giving consent. I do think that there's lines of what, just like in any other thing, it's, what is ethical behavior, and how do you manage in a way that is, honest and, I'd say honest. That's the best way to go.
And you're really focused on giving people the tools to help themselves truly. Sometimes and this could just be my stories and my interpretations of what I see when I'm in this store, but I feel like I see a lot of people desperate for maybe it's the certainty, like Heather was mentioning, or desperate for some sort of answer, or desperate to hear what they want to hear, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I have done readings for people who they don't like what I'm telling them, because they want me to tell them, like, no, it's love or whatever. I'm like, I'm telling you what is coming in. I only share with you what I hear or what I see or feel or know. And it may not be what you want to hear, which is also okay. Everything is you have free will. It's all going to play out. But I can't tell you something that is not true, at least from what I am being given. So because I'm also getting information on your behalf for you, so yeah.
So how do you transition that from from you giving them that information to them connecting to their information and hearing the messages themselves? Because ultimately, like we want as any of our clients, right, to have the tools themselves. I mean, a good coach, is like, I want to work myself out of the business, I get my clients so that they don't need to keep coming to me. So how do you transition that from like you giving them the message to them getting, like, learning to touch base and connect with themselves?
It's a great question, and it's interesting. There's a couple things. One, and I think Deb knows this, I've said this before, I'm like, if someone's reaching out to me and they're trying to have me do a reading or connect with them in another month, this is outside of like a regular sort of coaching agreement. If someone said they just want a reading, for example, if they're trying to talk to me in a month, then they haven't gone and done anything or done any work, and I'm not meeting with you. Like, you should not be talking to, this should be a maybe 3 months, 6 months to a year if you're coming back to me for anything. It just depends on whatever the situation or topic is. The way I describe it is I give you a prescription. I know what to tell you, what to do with the information. And if you are doing those things, you will start to be able to get information for yourself, whether that is you are getting a download on your own, you're getting connection to your creativity, which is then helping spark, your confidence in your inner knowing and what's coming up. It is varied for each person, but definitely the information that comes through is given, I believe, as a way to help you connect to your own inner knowledge, inner awareness. So I would say it.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we started talking a little bit before we got on.
Yes.
Right? About the idea of is there some people that would say growing up, some people who grew up with certain religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs that, like, this is like voodoo, witchcraft, like it's not from God. What was your background, and like what needed to be true for you to embrace this gift that you had and to like step into it fully?
Also a very good question. I would say, well, first, I grew up Catholic. I feel like Catholic, there's lots of mystical. If you really like pay attention, there's a lot of mystical in Catholic. And in all religion, if you really like pay attention, there's always something mystical involved. So to me, that is connected to God, source, whatever people want to call it, or it feels comfortable for you. And I don't know. I mean, if you're going to talk about angels, that's pretty mystical.
We're going to talk about rising from the dead. That's pretty mystical.
Yeah. And I guess I never, and my mom's like super duper Catholic, and our family all grew up Catholic, but I just, my dad grew up when he was a kid, he was Baptist, but he converted to Catholicism. But I just feel like it's all the same. If you are able to have conversation with God, you have to have faith and trust that something is possible. Yeah. And that any way that it shows up, if it's done from a sense and a place of like love and connection to, faith in a higher God being, Jesus, universe, then it is all intertwined, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense to me for sure. And I had to go through a period of deconstructing, like only the messages, like they stopped once the Bible was done being written, which was written, how long after Jesus died, like it was like all these things just stopped. And, like we was raised it like there's no other way that God can speak at this point. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like how does he make like us in a world where he's like, nope, this was my time frame of me speaking through you.
Yeah.
Do it anymore.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was raised Catholic as well, and I think I questioned a lot. I mean, I didn't not believe in that, but once I knew there were like other religions existed, I would be like, well, okay, if somebody is Hindu, how can we say that they're going, like, I just always ask these questions. Are you telling me that they're going to go to hell because they don't believe in this system that we believe in? That never made sense to me, even when I was a tiny kid. And I'm like, I'm not going to buy that story.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think, I think it's an interesting thing because there is, I would say, fear of the unknown, which is the fear, but having faith is also the unknown.
Right.
So having the,
and that's the funny thing though, it's like, but I have faith in this thing that I know, like they're like, I have faith. And you're like, yeah, but you only have faith in the thing that you're certain of. That's not faith.
It's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's true. But also but in that, even if you have faith in the thing that you know, if you are praying on something that is in the unknown, it still requires a level of faith, so, and where that comes from, who knows? So I don't know. It is why would there be a universe or a place where God wouldn't want everything to kind of be experienced in some different way by other people to teach each other? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's too deep or.
It is. Yeah. No, and also just, I don't know how you guys feel. I'm pretty sure I actually do know how both of you feel on this, but like for me personally, like in regards to that question, Heather, when people aren't ready to buy into, these things that I think I do know to be true at this point, as far as like mystical practices and how, the universe kind of does work in my viewpoint, I'm not interested in trying to convert somebody. So if you're ready for it and you want to buy into it, I think it will make sense to you. But if you're not, then that's okay. You can believe in whatever you want to believe in if that's working for you. I don't think I'm not interested in changing people. I'm interested in helping people that want what I can offer, but I'm not here to change anyone's mind.
That's a good way to think about it. Sorry, Heather.
What? No, there's no sorry. I just think it's fascinating. Just the more that I dive into some of this stuff, like hearing people, and again, knowing my own resistances, to it. But what shifted my mind was the having an experience, and it's one thing when you have head knowledge of something. That's a whole different thing when you have an experience of something. And knowing can deny anyone else's experience. People try to, right? But nobody can deny it. For me, it was like first time I experienced energy work, and there was such a big shift in me. And I was like, I was raised in the church and like depressed, wanted to kill myself. I'm like, I had Jesus, like clearly. And the crazy thing is that I know that there's people who think like, well, we live in a fallen world, and we're gonna suffer here. And I'm like, oh, like, oh, there's a loving God. Like, what the heck is that? Like, how is that even? And so the first time I experienced energy work, and felt lightness, like just enter my chest and the heaviness lift off. I couldn't deny that there was something to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it started me down that path. And are there things that I'm still like every once in a while, like certain things I'm like, come on, because there's wackadoos, there's charlatans in whether you go in the Catholic Church, I mean, how many terrible people are, leave the Catholic Church, the Christian Church, all of them, and it's the same thing in the energy world. Like there's not pure intention people in all of the places.
Of course. I think you could also argue there are people that have had those same experiences through religion, right? Where that was where they found that powerful experience that you had. And so
yes,
that's their path, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're all right. Everyone's path is right.
Yeah.
That's my little hippie viewpoint.
We'll take it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I want to kind of touch on something that I don't even know if I shared this piece with you, Heather, but something cool that Mari does and that I have had the opportunity to experience and I'm going to experience again. So I'm super excited. I want to talk about how you do this in the group setting because I think it's super powerful. Because we did in your last go around, I won't take over spilling all the beans about your program, but we did some group readings, which were very, very fascinating to me because we had how many people in our group? Six?
Mm-hmm.
6 women. Yeah, it was all women. Yeah. Sometimes people
it was all women.
I don't want to offend them. But anyway, I loved that you had done group readings. And so everybody kind of came with a question that was obviously pertinent to themselves only. But every single time I was like, oh, there was a message for me in that. And it was super powerful. So I would love to talk, for you to expand on the group work and how it kind of amplifies, at least in my opinion, in a group setting.
Thanks. Thanks. I wasn't expecting that. I have a program that is called Cultivate Your Inner Wisdom. And it is about helping women connect to their inner knowing and trust their inner knowing, connecting to their clarity. And one of the things that we do is we do energy work in a group. And it's sort of the same thing. I feel like, and I'm sure you, Heather, too, right? You've experienced it in the group.
I do group energy healing, yeah.
Yeah, there's still whoever's in that container at that time. Any kind of conversation or debriefing or discussion afterwards, whatever the person is going through, there is always something for the other person or people in the group to learn, and it affects them and hits them in the same way. And it's the same with like doing a group. If I do, even if I do it even online, I'm going to do like a quick, I'm going to answer many questions or pull an oracle card. The messages always are interconnected, and I believe it's when a group comes together, there is something about the intentions that people make in the container of the group, and that it is meant for healing, awareness, clarity, empowerment of all of those people. So no matter what comes up, whatever your situation or topic, there is meant to be something for everyone to take from it. Even myself personally, like if I've ever been in a container, I always get something out of something, even if I am not the person speaking up. It's like, I need to write this down. There's something about the synergy of the people coming in together, and it's always the right people for the right time, if that makes sense too. But I'm not doing anything. Really, I feel like I don't do anything. It's just, it is the energy and essence of the women that are in that group together at that time. I just get to be a facilitator or a messenger, truly. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Are you still accepting people for the next round?
I am. It starts on Thursday, the 15th. I'm like, what is today? It starts on Thursday, the 15th, but I am still accepting. I am. You can reach out to me. If this is on the Instagram, you can DM me. You can apply.
I am gonna. It takes us like, it might not be until tomorrow. Depends.
That's fine. There's still time
to do. There's some like internet magic that has to happen. But then I will upload it to Instagram and I will tag you.
Oh,
or
yeah.
if there's anything you want me to put in the bio, we can do that. But Heather, you can share the website too, right? Heather has the power while we're live. I don't know how to do any of this.
I don't know. Yeah, definitely. You can, anything. And if it has questions, you can reach out and ask me. It's a 12-week program, and it is really intended to help you connect to your inner knowing, to gain clarity, and to really trust yourself, truly.
And I think maybe, because I think this is something that I personally, like, I'm feel like I'm tapped into that and I'm very open to that. But I don't know the other women in the group, like some of them, it seemed like this is not a day-to-day thing for them to live in this space and talk about these things. And so I've been seeing some of your testimonials that you're posting, and it seems like it is for everybody. You don't have to be living in this space or subscribe to any of these things to get benefit out of it.
No. And I would say that for most of the people in both groups, they have experience, probably have experienced a reading or something like a reading, but it doesn't mean you have to have gone to that experience before, because you'll have a one-on-one with me and I will walk you through everything, and it will be a safe space, safe container for sure. And there are amazing women in the program already. So that's part of it. And the exciting part of it is the community, because that was the thing that I've noticed resonated the most, is the sense of community that the women felt, even if they don't stay in touch afterwards, in that space, in that time, feeling like they're connected and that they're not alone. They're not going through their experience on their own.
Yeah.
So what would you say that you see are some of the biggest things that stop, I'll say women, like let's just focus on women right now, like what that you see prevents women from really trusting themselves and connecting to their inner wisdom?
I think we just don't trust ourselves in general. And so because of that, we seek everything outside of ourselves, because whatever you hear can't be right. And so some of that is feeling overwhelmed because it feels like it's too big of a task or ordeal to accomplish, instead of looking at, the first baby step. It's always, I have to solve the big problem. I think that's one thing, is it can feel overwhelming. I think that we've just gotten so wrapped up on the day-to-day and the shoulds of everything that we don't even listen to and pay attention to the signs that are happening even within our own body. The kink in your neck could actually be a no. No, I don't want to do that, but I'm going to say yes. But all of a sudden I've got a kink in my neck, or not realizing that. I think that, how do I want to say this? We have just been taught that you have to seek the answers outside of us for whatever. And if you don't even know that when you feel excited that your stomach flutters because you're so busy in your brain and looking outside, then you can't even connect to what is already true for you. And I also think, there is an element of, forgetting to love ourselves first and giving it out to everybody else before we give it back to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. When you dive into like women's stories, there seems to be like, I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's going to come back to like childhood trauma. Right? And like, mom said this, dad did this. Do you see any themes or like, overarching themes in the people that you work with?
It really is varied. It's really varied. And it depends on, sort of what the main intention is the person's looking to work on. But I tend to, and this doesn't happen every time, but I tend to be able to connect, especially if I'm doing a reading, to a time in life where something happened. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it was like when you were, 5 years old or 7 years old. It sometimes can be like when you were 19 years old. I'm getting this energy, and I don't actually know that. It's a very interesting thing. I can't tell you the pinpoint of the year. I usually can get a sense of like, this feels like you were between, 17 and 19. And it feels like, sometimes I see it, basically the way I can explain it is I must see like the person in the black room, for example, and it's just like black in that person. And I might sense like, this feels like it was between this age, and it feels like this might have been attached to it or whatever. And usually the person is able to connect to that, but it isn't always the case that and I don't want to call it just a trauma and make it feel trivial, because this may not always be a traumatic situation or a traumatic situation for that person. It could have just been at that point, something occurred that is still affecting you, if that makes sense.
It could be like little T trauma.
It could be little T trauma. It may not even be a trauma. I've also seen like, the opposite, where I'll get an image of a person as a little kid, like running in a field of flowers, and it's like, it feels like it's a field of flowers. What was happening at that age? It's like, it's not always something traumatic or connected to trauma. It could just be this is the essence. I've had people where I've done it for, where it's like, this is when you felt your most like badass. You
got that kind of stuff for me too. Yeah, you got a lot of like, go back to your childhood when you felt happy and harness that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which resonated very well for me.
Yeah.
And, like helping me find my path, right? Like if I'm not doing the things that are fun for me, I'm not having fun.
Yeah.
But I'm not my most powerful if I'm not in that state.
Yeah. I remember someone early on where it was connecting to them. And again, I feel like it was between like a 5 and a, 7, 5 and 8 years old type of thing. Oh, that's too far. It was probably 5 and 6, 7 years old. And it was like, feels like you're wearing a red dress or a red polka dot dress, and you feel like the bomb.com kind of, and it was a while later that person reached out, and they were like, found the picture of themselves in a dress that was red. It wasn't like polka dot or whatever that I had like seen in my mind's eye. And they're like, I remember when I found that picture, I felt like I was unstoppable. And that is, and the message to that person was, that is like the energy that you need to tap into, you at that age, at that time when you felt unstoppable, which that's not a trauma, right? That's just that's the energy of you when you felt the most powerful version of yourself. And it doesn't always happen at that age, by the way. It's just the thing I can remember.
So it's like a forgotten energy.
Yeah, that's a great way of sharing that. Yes, it's a forgotten energy, or energy that, or a time that affected you, possibly positively or negatively, that you may need to reconnect with or remember. So I hope that answered your question. There's not a always a theme, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just as we just start to wrap up, I'd love to hear about one of your favorite stories about somebody that you worked with, of like who they were before you worked with them. Like, what was their challenge? Like, and like specifically, like what was the challenge? Like, how did it show up in their life? And then, like, who were they after?
Oh my gosh. That's like, that's okay. I'm like, there's so many, I'm trying to think of like, whose story do I want to share in a, obviously in a anonymized way. Oh my gosh, who do I want to tap into? I would say the story that I can think of right now that's popping into my brain is I had a client who was in a soul-sucking job and also was trying to decide how she wanted to proceed, whether it was to go her own way or even to just, start her own business or do something different. And the thing for her was, again, back to like the energy of who you were, was actually, this is something I will tell all people to consider. Remember, who is your alter ego? What is your alter ego? Who is she or he? Because what does your alter ego say? What would your alter ego do? And what started to shift for her was, among a lot of other things on top of, doing the practical, actions, also connecting it to that, that alter ego, that when I would get her messages back to me about the action she was taking and the things she was doing, which was give notice, quit her job, new things started showing up in terms of new opportunities for her to work, doing her regular morning practice for her was affirmations and some, connecting with herself. But she started sending her messages to me with her alter ego name, because that alter ego was the element that she used to harness, her truth and cross-check when she was feeling self-doubt about, what she should do or how she should move forward. And so that's the first story that came to mind, but it was truly, who is this alter ego? What is she all about? What would she say? And then how do you take control from there? As well as, like I said, doing the other affirmation work that she was doing for herself and some of her other practices that she was bringing in. She's got a new job that she loves. She's gotten clarity on the fact that she, isn't ready to start her own thing, but doesn't mean that she's not going to start her own thing, because she's realized that there's so much she can learn in her new job. Way more freedom than she's ever had in terms of what her job has to offer, clients that she actually loves to work with. And that was by taking some small steps first, truly. Yeah. Hopefully that answers the question and I gave you enough of an insight without, obviously sharing too much information about my client.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not saying her name, so.
Yeah, no. No, I am not. Unless you gave me permission.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you feel like, if somebody was like, I don't understand, like a psychic life coach, I don't understand, like if there was one, one or like a couple of things that you could help to make people feel more at ease and understand that, what would you say?
I think there's a couple things. It doesn't even matter if it's me or anybody else, is, check out the person. So whether it's going to LinkedIn, whether it's going to check out their Instagram, definitely going to their webpage, checking out, if they have, testimonials, and taking advantage of opportunity to have a phone call, to have your questions answered. I think those are the first and foremost things that I would say to people. I would also say, to really take some time to sit back and actually breathe into your heart and listen to your heart and ask the questions and answer those questions. How does this feel? Do I feel really comfortable having a conversation with this person or not? Because I may not be the right person for you, but the right person does exist for you. And to be comfortable with that, and to also be comfortable with, I have clients who've come to me who have told me, I have followed you for a while, and I got the ping a while ago that I should work with you, but then I just didn't, and then I saw you again and I was like, it's time to work with you. And so trust that as well, and don't feel that you have to be pressured or rushing into any kind of partnership, because the reality is, as a client, I expect that you are going to do the work. I'm just a facilitator, and your results are in direct correlation to the amount of work that you put in and your willingness to do the work. And so you want to feel like you can work with someone who you feel safe and confident and comfortable with being 100% yourself, so that you can get the results that you desire.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that, because when I first started working as a therapist, I worked at a group home for adolescent girls. I lived in South Jersey outside of Philly. So we had girls from Trenton and Camden and Philly and New York. And clearly I'm white. And, most of the girls weren't, right? And they'd come in and with their social worker. And I said to them, every single girl that came in, I said, listen, I want you to interview me, because if we're going to be working together, like, you need to feel comfortable with me. And every single social worker was like, no one has ever said that to them. No one has, because they just felt like they were being interviewed to see whether or not they were a good fit. And I'm like, if you don't feel comfortable working with me, it's not going to, I'm here to help you. But if you don't feel comfortable, right, whether it's because I'm white or because of how I talk or whatever, like, I want to help you find the best place for you. And every girl wanted to come to that place, because like, they had the choice. And, having been in the Tony Robbins world, which, is a very masculine focused coaching. And it's like, you decide now. And if you don't decide now, then you're not serious about your future. I'm like, I have the same thing when I talk to clients. I'm like, potential clients, I'm like, think about it. Get back to me. Like, you don't have to answer right away, which is so different in the coaching world, because it's like, you need to answer right away. And, if you're not serious about your life, if you're not, you would say right now if you were serious. I'm like, ugh. So icky. So it's
yeah, and it doesn't have to be that way.
No. Yeah. I'm glad to know that there's other people out there doing that too.
It's always refreshing.
Affirming. Awesome. So Deb, do you want to close us out? Any last thoughts from you? Anything that you think is important to know?
I think we covered a lot. And I know we're taking up more of your time than I promised, Mari, so I don't want to keep you any longer. But do you have the contact info, Heather? Can you post it in the Mari's contact info? Yeah, I think we covered a lot. I think I'm so happy and grateful that you came on to share with us. I can't wait to get started with another group. That'll be exciting.
I'm excited to have you. And I'm so grateful that you had me join you both. I really appreciate the time and just getting to know you better and connect with you this way. I really had a blast.
Thanks, ladies. We'll talk later. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.